Get pumped.
Hello there, everybody out there in Trinity Force podcast land. My name is not Scoreboard Buzzer. My name is actually Optimus Tom. I am not Mott Ganorum. I am the other Tom. But however, unfortunately, Mott Ganorum could not be with us tonight. It's not for any bad reasons, however, though. Does anybody want to say why Mott Ganorum is not here?
He's about to become Mr. Machinorum. Wait a minute, that's not how that works.
He's going to become Mrs. Machinorum.
He's going to...
Mrs. Machinorum.
He is about to be Mrs. Machinorum. He actually just got engaged this past week, so congratulations, Mott, from us here at the Trinity Force podcast, or the LCS Rundown version of it, that is, and all of our fans out there in podcast land. If you see him, or you see him online, first you should stomp him in game, and then you should congratulate him for that.
Only post-stomp. Do not congratulate pre-stomp. That's really important.
That's BM, and you will be banned if you do that. However, I am still joined by the rest of the Trinity Force LCS Rundown crew, including Greg Credible Mushroom Russo.
Hello there.
Mr. Mitch Cereal Box Turner.
How's it going?
And Daniel Asifa, the man with the graphics Dracos.
Yeah.
That's his full title.
Yes, that's my full title. You follow
really
me on Twitter at LOL_Sifa, the man with the graphics Dracos.
Which you could totally fit into one handle.
And if you guys are not like Mott Ganorum, you can join us here live on Sundays shortly after 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 6 p.m. on the Pacific side, and I'm done with working in European time, so I won't do that. Live every single Sunday on stream.trinityforcepodcast.com. Don't forget to subscribe and review us on iTunes and Stitcher. You can find all of that over on trinityforcepodcast.com. You can also find out, of course, our other shows over there, including the Odds LOL podcast, which releases every Thursday, and the scrubs over at the Trinity Force proper, who do a show Mondays and Wednesdays and absolutely suck at 1v1s.
Oh my goodness. For those of you who didn't watch.
This is what happens when I get to host.
Me and Mitch, Mr. Cereal Box here, casted a very exciting full 5 games of 1v1s where Tom was victorious, going 3-2, and really showing how the LCS podcast likes to stick it to the T-Force podcast. They're pretty epic games. I would recommend they're available on YouTube, and anyone who wants to watch them, head on over there and watch them. You can watch Adam pick Poppy in an attempt to troll Tom unsuccessfully. You can watch Adam fall for the same brush trick 2 times in a row after it's remade. 3 times in a row after a game is remade because of his poor connection. It's pretty exciting and pretty embarrassing. I highly recommend watching it.
I mean, it was... we freaked out at the end of it, too. It's the best possible ending.
Yeah, watch Game 5. If you have to watch anything, watch Game 5. I recommend watching all of them, though.
I like that we're suggesting games of the 1v1 that last, like, maybe
games to
an hour.
watch this, ladies and gentlemen. Game 5 of the Optimus Tom versus Anaponophobia Cogswell 1v1.
It was almost as long as the
For the pride
EULCS.
of EU.
It was almost as long as the EULCS third place matchup for those who didn't get a chance to see that.
Let's talk about the pick ban phase.
Let's talk about how all we see are the same bands in every single 1v1. No, but if you guys didn't get a chance to see that, it was over. You can find that on the YouTube channel, which will also be under a link at trinityforcepodcast.com. It was a lot of fun. I know Sifa and Cereal Blocks had a lot of fun casting it. Adam and I had a lot of fun playing in it. And hopefully, if Adam gets around to it, we can start organizing more of these 1v1s and maybe some inter-podcast 5v5s as well. So you'll want to stay tuned to the website, or at least the Twitter account at T-Force Podcast on Twitter, just to kind of figure out when that stuff is going to be.
Wow, those are some nice transitions. I don't think I'll be rolling my eyes too much tonight.
Well, you see, there's a curse and a blessing. When you're not Mrs. Tom and you're Mr. Tom, your transitions actually work.
Oh, there you go.
However, speaking of transitions, I don't have one for the next segment, but what we're going to do is we're going to jump into a lot of league action that went on just this past weekend. First off, before everything else starts, we had some more teams qualify for Worlds, which is pretty important. Over in the GPL, the finals went down on Saturday morning/Friday night. It was 3 hours before the OGN finals. It was a best-of-5 match between the Taipei Assassins and AHQ Esports Club, and much to my personal dismay, Taipei Assassins absolutely stomped the finals 3-0, and they will be the first team from the Southeast Asia region qualifying for Worlds this year.
Yeah, and that means AHQ drops into the gauntlet-style regionals that brings the top 4 teams not named Taipei Assassins into just a bracket 6v5. Then the winner plays the 4th, winner plays 3rd. to see who's the other team. Well, actually, that's not right. That should be 5th, 4th, 3rd, and 2nd. So to see who else qualifies from GPL. But yeah, it was sad that wasn't really a good series. But I think AHQ still got a pretty good shot to qualify.
I'm pretty excited to see it. I think that AHQ has a good shot. I'm not a big TPA fan since they've changed their roster around, and it's not really the TPA we came to know and love in the earlier seasons. Yeah, in season 2. Yeah, which is not surprising. I don't think it would be really surprising if they'd kept any of their original roster at this point. But still a great team, and they definitely deserve their wins. I mean, it was a pretty clean 3-0.
So one of the other things that happened over the weekend was we actually had the wrap-up of the LPL season, which does not determine anything for Worlds, but definitely warrants mentioning that the LPL is going to be a little bit different than the way that OGN and GPL do their qualification for Worlds. Now, Edward Gaming won the spring split of LPL. They won the spring playoffs. So if they win the summer playoffs as well, they will advance from China as the number 1 seed going into Worlds. If they do not win the summer playoffs, they will have to play against the summer playoff winner to figure out who qualifies as the number 1 seed, and the rest of the teams will fall down into a 14 double elimination bracket to determine the remaining 2 seeds for China. Now, that's still a little bit far away. We had the wrap-up of the summer season just this past week, and Edward Gaming, OMG, Royal Club, who you guys may remember from last year's Worlds, and LGD Gaming all qualified for the summer playoffs. And LGD, well, they qualified in a way we're not 100% certain of because they were tied with World Elite, but they are the ones who wound up qualifying. So apparently there's some sort of tiebreaker going on.
I think the breakers work that whoever has the better record against the other team, I think it's similar to the way that LCS tiebreakers work. I'm not 100% on that, but I know that it was a pretty big upset that World Elite did not qualify, and a lot of fans were really, really surprised. I mean, they were definitely... It's been a long time since we've seen World Elite not qualify for any form of finals in
I heard
LPL.
I heard that it was resolved by the 280 carries having a dance off. But I can't confirm it.
This would that would explain Vasily's mad dance skills would be the prep.
Yep. Oh, indeed.
No, they tied in their season series against each other too. So I can't find anything that tells us why LGD made it through, but they'll be playing. They play EDG in the first match,
so
and it's a double elimination. Anyway. Double elimination, just like the regionals. So I kind of like that. That's going to be a lot of good games. I prefer double elimination, anyways. Too.
I really like having a winner and a losers bracket. That's one of the things that I really envy about like the fighting game community is that I think having a winner and a losers bracket makes games a lot more exciting to watch, especially if someone is coming back from losers going into grand finals. It gets you really hyped, especially if it's your team or if it's the underdog team.
Yep.
Well, in addition to the LPL, we also had OGN wrapping up this week, and OGN Finals had no big implications on Worlds. Samsung Blue was already the first seed out of the Korean region, which we've known for quite some time already. The KT Rolster Arrows, however, they had a little bit to prove. They needed these circuit points in order to get a better place in the Korean regional tournament, and it was one hell of a best-of-5 series between these two teams.
God, KTA... I guess we always have to spoil what happened at the end, but KTA wins a 3-2 series, so we get a blind pick, and they went 3-2 in every single match in the playoffs, which is just incredible to see. Even just one blind pick for a team in the playoffs, 3 straight is insane. And if you guys just watch the entire series, you'll come to appreciate how much fun both those teams are.
Yeah, and it's a great show. The thing about Korean Law especially is they've really got their finals down, the structure for their finals. It's exciting. There's great intro videos. There's great interludes. They've got really cool team fight explanations between every single game. It's an excellent show, and no matter what level you're watching it on, how involved you want to get, you can really enjoy it. And I would say it's definitely something worth watching.
Yeah, and Blue didn't really lose out on anything by finishing second. They'd already locked up Korea's number 1 seed. And KTA, like Tom was saying, jumps from 4th to 3rd.
No, they jumped from 6th to 3rd, or 6th to 4th.
Okay, yeah, they jumped. They made a nice. They made it so they have to play one less series to get to Worlds. And as it is right now, they play the winner of their sister team, the Rolster Bullets, and Najin White Shield, and then the winner. God, this is such a crazy series. Anyways. The winner of that game will play the loser of Samsung White and SKTK, which happens in 2 weeks.
That one's going to take place on August 27th, I believe the date was, and then the regionals will go from the 27th until the 30th. You can also check out LOLesports.com. That has updated dates for everything. I'm pretty sure you can find that on Twitter as well. OGN Global's probably going to be tweeting about that one. But yeah, the OGN finals were, first off, every single game that KT Rolster A played in the OGN finals went to blind pick, which of course everybody loves a blind pick. But the finals themselves were they were back and forth. Blue kind of demonstrated their ability to, no matter what, be able to come back in a game. Rolster Aras demonstrated the fact that they are an aggressive Korean team, which it's pretty refreshing because we haven't seen something like that really since the Do Dive Najim Black Sword era really prevailing in such a big part of the League of Legends scene. So it's really exciting to see that, even though they could still get punished for it, they weren't invincible as we saw. But it was just a really back and forth kind of style, and highly recommend game number 4 if you guys have to go back and only are able to watch one game, because that was the game that sent it to blind pick and kind of rolled the momentum over into that one. Also, you should check out the opening because K-pop, and that is the biggest reason to check out OGN openings. That was pretty exciting, and we did touch upon the video features too. They had a feature where Samsung Blue were detectives trying to figure out why Deft was sad. And it was one of the most adorable things I've ever seen a group of grown Korean men do, which is kind of uncomfortable when you say it out loud. But
yeah,
that one too.
It goes to the long list of other things he's seen grown Korean men do.
No comment. Just walk away.
But this is the adorable one.
It's a spectrum.
But aside from OGN, actually getting an update from Twitch chat, Krykanos in the chat has updated us saying that it was a tiebreaker for LPL. It came down to how fast the teams beat each other, which is a little bit of a weird tiebreaker. But
it makes perfect sense for China. It makes perfect sense.
It makes perfect sense for them.
The hyper-aggressive meta, who can end the game sooner wins. Yeah, I mean, it's a little odd. From
they could
professional
just play a game.
standpoint.
Why don't you just play a game? But I don't know.
No one wants to watch any more LoL.
No one wants to watch more.
There's so many games. And just to recap on the OGN thing, watch Kakao, the jungler for KTA. He was amazing this week. And if you are a jungler or play jungle in any way, watch this guy. He's amazing. He plays a couple of different champions, and he does things I didn't even know were possible from the jungle. So definitely, once again, just an exciting set to watch.
Well, he played a lot of Kha'Zix, a ton of it, which we all kind of thought was dead for a little bit. But
yeah, and that's definitely something I'm hoping that the T-Force Popper will go into as they analyze the meta. But it's definitely it's a strong pick now, and it's totally change is good. Every time we think Kha'Zix is out, he comes back in stronger than ever.
Yeah, and that blind pick had double Maokai, double Yasuo, double Alistar, which I think is just insane. Telling you where the meta is right now, or Korea's at least letting us know.
I gotta say, one of the most insane things I think we've seen all weekend is how highly contested a pick Zillion has become.
Oh, yeah.
Considering how he hasn't had any changes since I think he was made.
Well, no, none of the recent item changes have affected him. It's frankly really surprising to see him coming in.
It's the hyper carry meta. That's why.
Yeah,
if you have somebody you're protecting, it makes.
It's the Lulu nerfs more than anything else that are bringing Zillion in, because he functionally serves the same purpose as Lulu. He's a lane bully. He has reasonable CC. I mean, worse than Lulu, but his revive when you build AP is incredibly powerful and can let you bring back not only a hyper carry but one of the absurdly powerful tanks like Maokai or Alistar, who having
kill.
Who take forever to kill already, and so when you bring them back to further protect your AD carry if your AD carry is safe, or bring back your AD carry who will still have the protection of that currently living Alistar or Maokai, it just becomes, teamfights get impossibly long, and longer a teamfight goes, the better it is for an auto attack based champion.
All right.
Well,
Yay, T-Force proper suddenly.
aside from some interesting picks in these games, moving on to Gamescom, it started out and we had 4 teams that actually qualified for Worlds at Gamescom this weekend. The 3 from the EULCS, but kicking off the Gamescom tournament was the International Wildcard. Now, there are 3 teams from the regions that don't necessarily have their own clearly defined LCS style tournament. Which is, of course, we had the Oceanic region where it was Legacy Esports, formerly Avant-Garde Ascension, who won out in the Australian or Oceanic qualifier. Dark Passage from Turkey, you guys may remember them from last year or from some previous DreamHack tournaments as well. They won every single season and the year-end qualifier in Turkey, so a very dominant team from there. And then Russian Force from the Commonwealth of Independent States, the CIS. They wound up coming in 7th place in their regional tournament, and then came all the way through the bracket and dominated the top teams and wound up qualifying. Unfortunately, they weren't really able to use a majority of their roster due to visa issues, which is slowly but surely, as issues develop in other parts of the world, becoming more and more of a problem for some of these players. But they were able to field a roster of subs, including Darker, who was formerly of Gambit Gaming. Unfortunately, by bringing some of Gambit into their team, I guess they followed in their footsteps as well, because throughout the course of the tournament, Russian Force did not do all too well. For those of you who are a little uninformed, I did steal that from your notes there, Sifa.
That's
so
okay. That's
credit to you.
I was going to be even meaner with it, so I'm kind of glad you said it. So it was a little bit nicer.
For those who don't know how that tournament went down, since there were 3 teams that qualified, it was a round robin style group stage where every single team played each other twice, once on the red side, once on the blue side, and then the top 2 teams via record wound up going into the final matchup in a best of 5 series to see who qualified for Worlds. Now, during the group stage, things started out pretty interesting. Everybody, I think, who paid attention to some of these teams kind of expected Dark Passage to just come in swinging and stomp everybody, and that didn't quite happen in the first game against Legacy Esports. Legacy actually took it to them.
Yeah, Legacy won that one, and it looked like it was going to be something to springboard for the rest of the weekend. And yeah, I mean, they did well. I mean, they finished 3-1, and unfortunately dropped the second game to Dark Passage. But
yes,
I mean, I say springboard, and then they both played Russian Force, so. That's not really.
Yeah, both teams, both Legacy and Dark Passage, both won both of their games against Russian Force, and then went 1-1 against each other. So they both ended the round robin 3-1 and went up against each other in finals. The first game that Legacy won was actually really rough for them. They came back from a pretty huge deficit in the early to mid game. Dark Passage was looking super strong, and they kind of threw a bit in the end. The thing about Legacy Esports that they're kind of known for in Australia is that they have games where they're unstoppable and they're amazing, and then they have games where they play absolutely terribly. And they're just known as an inconsistent team, so kind of like CLG or Dig, where they come in and some weeks they 4-0 no problem, and they look unstoppable. And then other games where they just drop it completely. And that's really what we saw in this tournament, I feel, was them starting out strong, or at least coming back and really feeling like you could get behind this team, and then they just threw it all away. In a 3-0 final where Dark Passage wins all 3 games.
Yeah, I think the 3-0 result belies. I mean, a few of those games were closer than that score would lead you to believe. But Dark Passage was definitely looking pretty crisp. And I'm really excited for these regional qualifier wild card type things. I think it's one of the more exciting aspects of Worlds where you're going to see some really fresh faces that we don't normally even hear about.
Yeah.
And I think Dark Passage could be something to keep an eye on. I don't know that they're going to really stack against the Korean teams, but they're definitely going to be entertaining to watch.
And I think the nice thing about this is it is an international tournament. I mean, on a smaller scale, but these teams don't play against each other on a regular basis, so you really never know what you're going to get coming into these wildcard tournaments. You don't know how teams are going to stack up against each other. But it's nice because, I mean, when we go into EU and we go into OGN, we have like these pretty set expectations of who's going to come out on top, and sometimes they're upset. But on these teams, like, we have no basis.
Exactly.
Because the metas are so vastly different. And I mean, it is like these small-scale global tournaments. And Dark Passage did look really good. I mean, their top laner, Fabulous, was awesome on Nidalee. It's absurd. I would be surprised if he ever gets to play that champion in Worlds. I mean, he crushed it. And their mid laner, too, was just on fire. Like, just excellent games from both of them. And it'll be interesting to see if the rest of the team can bring out that same level of performance. And if they can, this team could probably make it through group stages, I think. But once again, I mean, they're playing against Legacy and Russian Force, and I don't really know how strong those teams are compared to the rest of the world scene, but it'll be really interesting to see how it turns out.
Yeah,
well, we got plenty of knowledge on the Oceanic scene because we have a podcast about that.
We do, yes, we do.
Yeah, if you guys want to know more about Legacy Esports, it's an excellent podcast to watch as well because I believe that one of the members, and Stephen Garstone, I do not remember for the life of me what his name is now an analyst for IM2, which is a pretty awesome Australian team. So
that is
definitely go check that out.
Team Immunity, not Incredible Miracle, for those who may confuse it with the IM2 in Korea.
Which I said great team. If I said mediocre team, we could talk about Incredible Miracle.
Oh.
Yeah. So yeah, that puts Dark Passage through. Actually, I looked at the last 2 games. Those were both really fast games, it looks like.
Yeah.
both under 30 minutes, 28 minutes, 25 minutes. I mean, Dark Passage was the favorite, and they showed it in the last couple games.
Yeah, it was absurd. I mean, oh my gosh, Naru, their mid on Zed in Game 2, carried really, really, really hard. Absurd. Like, just played amazingly. And I mean, at that point, Fabulous, their top laner, was on Maokai and did pretty well. But then he got Nidalee again in Game 3 after totally crushing Game 1 with it. I don't
know how in the world they let him get that. Because, I mean, if I was Legacy Esports, I would still have, like, PTSD from the thrashing that Nidalee gave him. He was just getting kill after kill after kill. No one could go up against him. It was crazy. And how in the world do you let that go?
Well, they were scared of Kassadin.
They were also
one of them.
They're also very scared of Khal Drogo, their AD carry. I mean, Holy Phoenix, who looks like Khal Drogo. Do you know that Holy Phoenix could not participate with Dark Passage last year because he was 16, and this year he is 17, but he looks like a 30-year-old warlord?
Yeah, that's actually terrifying. I wonder if, like, he's just how tall is he? Is he really tall? I cannot remember. Like, I didn't get a good sense.
He was taller than Shocked, which means he's at least 5'8" with her heels on. So
I just want him to come in like full Drago cosplay and just like mean mug some Korean teams on Worlds.
He does not look like Khal Drogo. I'm looking at this right now.
One of these things you have to keep in mind too is Dark Passage. They were not at their fullest strength either. They came in with a sub in the support role. Their support player, which I'm gonna butcher his name, Treblenair or something like that. He unfortunately had to leave the team to go participate in his military service for Turkey, so he wasn't playing. They replaced him with a Norwegian player actually named Touch, who's had many a duo queue with Holy Phoenix over the inception and past couple of years of them playing on Dark Passage. So I wouldn't call him like a direct sub for the team, but the team was familiar enough with his champion pool, and it was very impressive actually because Legacy came in full strength, and Dark Passage, even though they had a sub, still the favorite, really showed and upset them basically in that best of 5 series at the end. And he totally looks like Khal Drogo, maybe a little bit smaller.
Like a smaller, pudgier, geekier Khal Drogo.
That's all you need.
Hair.
All right,
Yeah,
so it's
that's
Khal Drogo.
perfect.
It's like a Khal Drogo you'd find at Comic-Con.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Actually, that's actually quite perfect.
Comic-Con Khal Drogo coming in to carry Dark Passage to victory in Worlds. That'll be the headline.
This is like a great
Comic-Con
username.
Draven.
If I see Comic-Con Khal Drogo friend me on a league, I'm definitely going to play every game with them forever.
Time to name change my Smurf.
Yep, definitely. All right, let's get out of the international wildcard.
We had a
Tom's
lot
last
more
party
games
for friends.
Yeah. I need referrals. How am I ever gonna get Medieval Twitch? Anyway.
I wonder, Tom, how would you get Medieval Twitch, Mr. Riot employee?
I have no idea. Yeah. Anyway, EULCS, of course, is the main focus at Gamescom, and we had a metric butt ton of games to cover from there. It went all the way from the 5th place match, which was Super Haku against Millennium, all the way up into the finals. So let's go way back into everybody's minds to very early on Wednesday morning or late on Tuesday evening, depending where in the world you were at the time. And let us harken back. Actually, it was Thursday instead of Wednesday. See, that's my concept of time here. All the way back to the 5th place matchup. These two teams, Super Hot Crew and Millennium, we already talked about how in the quarterfinals, they definitely left a lot to be desired in their respective matchups. For those who didn't get a chance to catch the podcast last week, Super Hot Crew were flattened by Roccat 3-1, and Millennium looked like they forgot how to play the game against SK Gaming, and they wound up losing 3-0. So coming into this series, both these teams were extremely shaky, and I wouldn't say I really expected a good series between these teams, but I definitely didn't expect Millennium to still not remember how to play League of Legends.
They forgot. They still don't know how.
I don't know. This was a for those if you're wondering what series not to watch this week, this would be it. It's disappointing. It was. We're all struggling to come up with words because we were also. I mean, the pick bans were bad, the plays were bad, the throws were everywhere. It was bad League of Legends. It was not an exciting set of games to watch. I mean, I could spectate anyone on my friends list lower than Challenger, and it would be the same thing. It was not a great set of games.
Yeah. I don't know if I
Wow.
that. It was that.
Wow.
It was just like last week. We were talking about being disappointed in those series, and this is no different. Thankfully, EU made up for it later, but I have no idea what to say. But what that means in the long run, something that isn't opinion, is that Millennium does drop into the promotion tournament. They have to fight their way back, and we did find out they are going to be playing against Unicorns of Love, which was not a big surprise. Figured that would be the first team to be picked since Millennium finished 6th. They'll have to beat them to get back in.
And that also means that the Gambit is going to be playing against SK Prime, because we all cannot have NIP playing against Gambit because NIP shit the bed in the Challenger playoffs. And that, of course, means the Copenhagen Wolves have to play against the number 1 seed from the Challenger scene, which is H2K Gaming. Those are going to be, honestly, with the way Millennium's looking right now, I'd have to say all of those best of 5 series are going to potentially go either way.
Yeah,
which isn't a good thing. Which is
No.
not a good thing. Like, these LCS teams should just be like, whatever, stomp them. But I mean, it speaks to how good the Challenger teams are this year, and also how mediocre these LCS teams have been playing in the last couple of weeks.
If we had to go off of the last Super Week's performance, I would have to say that the LCS team that has the best shot at requalifying right now is probably Gambit.
I know.
Yeah.
I was gonna say it too, but it feels so bad, doesn't it? You literally hurt after you say that Gambit stands a chance.
Yeah, 2 weeks ago, or 3 weeks ago, no one would have said those words. But after that promising Super Week, all Gambit's fans have at least a glimmer of hope.
Yeah,
just a little bit.
And in case they ever miss their old Glory members, Darian and Genja have been duo queue streaming on Twitch TV all week, so people get to see Darian still. But no, Gambit's been looking extremely... I have to say, they were looking pretty damn good, and not to count out the other teams, because Millennium, okay, maybe it was just they didn't adapt to the patch. That usually takes them a little bit of time. It's where we saw them kind of struggling during the LCS split. So yes, they could recover, but looking at the games we have in front of us to analyze and just kind of mull over, they didn't look super strong. The Copenhagen Wolves, who actually, looking back, they're using Airwax in the promotion tournament as well instead of Broken Shard, which means that looking back at when they had Airwax on their team, up until the point of the season where they decided to get rid of him, he had the most deaths for a jungler, but he also had the most kills for a jungler. And that is something that Cotnex did to carry Millennium, Shook did to help out Alliance. It could potentially be that Airwax is what they needed to kind of keep going, because once they got rid of him, they won 1 game and lost the rest of them. Whereas when he was on the team, they were able to put up the rest of their wins in the season. So we'll have to see about that. But that is going to be the promotion tournament. All those teams are going to be playing a little bit later on. I think it's like the week after PAX.
It's 2 weeks. It's September 9th through the 11th, and I believe they play it the same days as the NA promotion, so it's kind of in between all the qualifications and Worlds, so we have a little bit to talk about in between. Thank you guys. The LCS Rundown needs more content. But yeah, what I think is happening is the first match, it goes Wolves, then Gambit, then Millennium, and NA goes the opposite direction. The 6th place from NA will play the first game, and then down to 7th and 8th. So we'll have all those. We'll know all the LCS teams way before Worlds, actually, for next season.
Which is actually pretty cool, because that means that there's not this promotion tournament that happens like a couple weeks before the split, and you have like a super hot crew situation where they have like a week and a half to start the LCS, which was, of course, all the fault of the Lemon Dogs, but that is a different story for a different time past. But moving on.
I'm excited to see. I think giving these teams a lot of opportunities to prepare for LCS is going to be great. It's going to make EU and NA much, much better. And I think that, having an opportunity to watch all these world games, they'll really get, if they don't have, coaches and analysts on their team, they'll get a good sense of the meta, and they'll know what to pick coming into this. Coming into the split. That being said, I mean, it's going to be a new season. Everything could be completely different, like it was from Season 3 to Season 4. Nothing could be the same by the time LCS starts up again. But I still think it's good to give them the time to prepare.
Well, you have 3.5 weeks. They know their opponents 3.5 weeks at a time. NA will have much less time, obviously, because Challenger Series playoffs are this week. So we'll know who's going to be qualifying for that tournament soon. And we won't know exactly the last team, of course, from the NALCS till PAX. But yeah, that'll be really. I hope they have a good shot, and I hope they're good matches. But I really have no idea how it's going to go down.
Well, speaking of good matches, we still have a lot of Gamescom left to cover, and some of the best matches that did happen were in the LCS playoff semifinals. I mean, maybe that's just my personal opinion, but watching the series between Fnatic and Roccat and Alliance versus SK, more so maybe the former than the latter, these were kind of
both of them.
They were kind of like the best. I would have to say some of the best games that we saw in EU during the weekend. I mean, we could kick it off with the first one that we saw, which is Fnatic against Roccat, which, by virtue of the fact that it went to 5 full games, really goes to show that, I mean, the best way I could summarize this is Roccat really stepped up their game in this series.
Definitely.
Yeah,
I wish that had been foreshadowing, too. I wish it had been foreshadowing.
Well, it almost was. I was surprised at how, I mean, both Roccat and SK, I think they really upped their game compared to what we saw of them toward the end of the split. Both of those teams looked like they were kind of on the rocks, but they really looked like they deserved to be there on this one. And I was legitimately worried for Alliance and Fnatic. I thought it could go. And especially when it got to that game 5, I was like, oh my God. And then it happened again in the next series, and it's like, oh my God, what is happening?
Yeah, the series, the Roccat versus Fnatic series was really close, and like you get to that game 5, and you're really not sure who's going to win. But the Alliance series was really frustrating for me because SK looked perfect until 30 minutes. Yeah. They looked perfect. They won. They like snowballed the early game. They were winning, and I'm like, there's no way they can lose. This is absurd. Alliance is getting crushed. This is unfathomable. And then they threw, and I was like, okay, well, here we are. There's SK. There's the SK I know. Throw in the game. There you were.
Well, to be honest, that is the polar opposite of the SK we saw during the regular season. They used to have a crap lane phase around the same mark where they were dominating Alliance, like the 20 to 25 minute mark. That's when they would kick things into high gear, and that's where they got their leads they had to try to coast into the late game with. They had, for a long time in the LCS, they had the shortest average game length because they would hit that stride and demolish their opponents before they could let them come back. This was literally a 180 of SK. They dominated the laning phase. They progressed into the mid game with a large gold lead, tried to execute the same game plan they used to, but it was just an outclassing by their opponents, in this case being Alliance, the team that came into the playoffs in the number 1 seed, figured they would have the best experience to do so, and it really showed in these games that even though Alliance was a good team enough to come back into it, it really showed that, to borrow from the wise words of Skara, SK were winning the games up until the point where they decided to lose.
Well, one thing that casters noted, I think, they were talking about how Alliance doesn't like grouping till they hit the exact power spikes they want. Mm-hmm. And I think that kind of showed a lot. These were long games. Every game in the SK series went to, I think, 40 minutes at least.
And they just all of them were between 45 and 50, which is
they were all
fantastic
really, really long
for
games.
Me.
Yeah. Oh, no, it's incredible. But, yeah, I like that Alliance showed that they can come back from pretty much anything. And once they start grouping, their team fighting is just ridiculous. Their synergy has always been there. This split, and yeah, they picked up the 3-1 win over SK, and I thought SK had a chance. They won the second game. They had a really, really good second game, but I didn't really think at any point that they had the series, that they were going to be able to roll over Alliance.
I think if you look at like 10-15 minutes in every one of those games, I mean, they won 4 out of 4 early games. Like, they won hard. And the thing is Tom was saying, they're notoriously bad in the early game, I think, because they don't quite have as high mechanical skill as other teams, but they balanced it out in this series by just making excellent team decisions and having really, really good team play. And the thing that really bothered me was that after all that great early game team play, they still managed to like make these awkward decisions in the late game, people getting caught, poor team fight engages. And I mean, part of that is Alliance is just amazing at team fights. They have always been good at team fights, and they're an excellent team fight team. But the other part is like SK. It was so odd because they shifted. They went from excellent team decisions to really poor team decisions as the game went on.
Well, that's something that you don't really think about. Like, a lot of teams practice how to come from behind for a loss or how to establish an early lead. But if you really think about it, SK hasn't had much experience anytime recently closing a game with a huge lead that they've started with. Like, that weak early phase is sort of the thing they've been working on. Now they've fixed it, and they didn't know what to do with it.
Lo and
They didn't
behold,
know how to close it out before Alliance got those power spikes.
lo and behold, that was the same exact problem that plagued Alliance during the Spling Split, which was the split that SK ended first place in. And they switched positions a little bit in this one. I got to dial it back a little bit to the picks and bans phase to begin with SK and Alliance, because just looking at the actual pick and ban phase, SK has always been really, really good at this, whether it be because they have a couple oddball picks up their sleeve or they know who they need to secure champions for. Specifically with SK, they need to try to secure something for Jesus, and they know that Freddy's going to be a target for a lot of things, but he still has like 5 or 6 champions he can play rather consistently. In this pick and ban phase, the top laners were heavily contested, and we saw Freddy getting something he was comfortable on multiple games, which whether it be Aatrox, whether it be Maokai, or some other sort of top laner in these circumstances, he got something that he wanted to do, and they abused that. Svenskeren brought out his Kha'Zix, which we said Kha'Zix very popular in Korea this weekend, very popular in the EU LCS this weekend. Wouldn't be surprised to see him in NA in the upcoming weeks either, just because of where he is right now in the actual overall arcing the word metagame that I don't necessarily want to use, but I'm going to have to stick in there. But combined with those two picks, they really attacked the weaker spots of Alliance, which in this series was glaringly apparent. The fact that Wicked didn't seem to have practiced the strong top laners right now. Like his Alistar in game number 1 was abysmal.
Oh, it was bad.
Yeah.
I mean, that was the thing.
So many missed pulverizes. Oh.
And a lot of the reason that they were losing in the early game in these mid-game fights was that they would still try to make these excellent fights, these Alliance fights, and Wicked seemed to always be like, let's do it. I'm tanky, let's fight. And the 4 of the members would literally just stand back there and watch Wicked go in as Alistar, all hit some people up and die immediately. Like, that was it. That was his contribution to the majority of the team fights until 30 minutes, was him going in and dying and then backing off and losing a tower.
But Tom, I gotta say, you've been giving Freddy a lot of hate for the past couple weeks. How good was Freddy, not just against Alliance, but in pretty much every single game this entire week?
I mean,
Are you ready to say that he's awesome?
I really can't argue with the fact that Freddy did well because he played Aatrox, and that apparently is the bane of every person who plays top lane's existence.
As you can see, I'm making motions that would indicate I'm upset. I don't know how to describe this, but why is Aatrox good? Someone write me an article and explain to me.
So I actually had a little bit of a Twitter rant earlier on in the week with one of the community heads at LolKing, who we were going back and forth and talking about specifically Wicked in the top lane and his poor performance in these series against SK. His Alistar game number 1, his build, he went Rod of Ages into Trinity Force, into Frozen Heart, and ended with a Spirit Visage like he was Maokai, which is, I get Alistar and Maokai are kind of the 2 top laners you want to be in right now, but it's not the exact same clear-cut path, the same kind of build. It didn't necessarily work out for him, despite Alliance being able to carry through and win that game. Maokai, Alistar, they banned out Nidalee because Freddy is, of course, a notorious split pusher. He will just kind of go off and do his own thing and then make the enemy team come to him while SK groups up elsewhere on the map. But we went back and forth about Aatrox specifically because everybody in the top lane of EU, Soaz, Zazis, we saw Freddy being the first one to really bring it out here in Europe. Everybody you can think of, even except for maybe Youngbuck. I don't think Youngbuck played it yet, but digressing from that, everybody in the top lane of Europe has played Aatrox from the beginning of the season all the way through to this shift of where it is now, except for Wicked. And even though Wicked, back in Season 2, he was an Aurelia player. Aurelia wasn't really good in Season 3. The champion he picked up to be his new Aurelia was Aatrox. And he hyped it up. He played hundreds of solo queue games of this champion. He played it throughout the EU LCS split. He played it in the playoffs. It was his go-to top laner. He had to have it picked or banned away from him. It was Aatrox and Renekton. In comes Season 4 with the giant revival, twice because of Bloodbath, from Aatrox.
There you go.
And Wicked doesn't touch the champion. If you had put Wicked on Aatrox and taken it away from Freddy, this series might have been completely different. Although, granted, one of the things we harp on Wicked here is it looked like he wasn't as practiced on the champions he played this weekend, which of course means that if we did pick up Aatrox, he might have kind of fumbled on it still. But
Freddie was good on not just Aatrox.
Well, Freddie played Aatrox in 2 of the games that one of them that SK won. In the first game, the SK probably should have won. In the third game, he played Maokai, which I hope the Trinity Force proper touches upon. Apparently gets dumpstered by Swain, which is awesome because that means more Swain in the top lane. And he played Maokai again in the last game where they wound up losing. So his Aatrox games were solid, but instead of trying to give it to Wicked, they gave him Swain, which was great. But then when Swain wasn't an option, he went back to Alistar, which wasn't great again.
I don't know why he didn't give Swain in the last game. He could have.
I don't think it was banned out.
It wasn't. So I have no idea. We could talk about the team comp and try to figure that out, but that would take maybe a bit too long.
Well, we have spent a decent amount of time on this one, so if anybody have any closing remarks? Anybody want to recommend a game for the listeners that may have not gotten a chance to check it out, to go back in the VODs and watch?
That first one was good.
Yeah.
Watch game 1. Watch. Yeah. It summarizes the series really well. Game 1 is like the perfect summary of the whole thing.
Well, we wound up having Alliance advance over SK in a 3-1 fashion, despite what probably should have happened. On the opposite side of the bracket, however, there was another semifinal match that happened between Fnatic and Roccat, which got my blood boiling because Roccat really took it to Fnatic in some of the games. They wound up winning.
They almost had it.
They almost had it. And you really have to give credit to, first off, the pick and ban phase. So I'm going to give credit to Veggie, especially for game number 1, having the ability to give Overpass something that he was extremely comfortable on. I believe it was Zillion in the first game that he wound up picking up. Double checking right now.
It was.
That was the Zillion game that really set the precedent to Fnatic banning Zillion in the rest of the matches. And all props to Yankos, who was heavily banned out. Roccat seemed to know that was going to happen, and also banned junglers against Cyanide. So Cyanide was put on something like a Jarvan or a Rengar, who we know he hasn't played and isn't the most comfortable on. And Yankos broke out Kha'Zix, which, kind of a theme for the weekend, was absolutely devastating to Fnatic.
Kha'Zix is a powerhouse on these teams right now. And I didn't really like the comp that they picked Kha'Zix into game 1. I didn't think they had enough tanks. I didn't think they had enough options. But they were so far ahead that it didn't really matter. They didn't need that kind of thing. And I think the reason Kha'Zix is coming back a lot is because you don't need as much damage when literally every meta top laner except for Nidalee is just tanky, absurdly tanky.
I think it's going beyond just Kha'Zix, though. Oftentimes, well, I don't have exact numbers in front of me, but very frequently you'll see Kha'Zix Jinx, Kha'Zix Tristana. Their focus is more on these resets. I would almost say we're in a bit of a reset meta, and I think it has something to do with the hyper carries. Because they're getting in these kills so much faster, champions like Kha'Zix have a bit of hidden power because they're constantly getting those resets, which are enabling them to put out more damage, reposition more. It's something that doesn't quite show on the just raw stats of the champion, but the actual applied damage is it's much, much higher because kills are piling up faster. And as the team fights extend a little bit, as you were saying before, that repositionability becomes hugely valuable.
I absolutely love that point that you're making there, Greg, because the biggest thing here is when Kha'Zix is paired with a Zillion or a Lulu, and sustained supports are so popular right now. We see the Namis, we see people rushing for Mikael's Crucible, we see all these champions that are all about keeping somebody alive. Those resets will come, they will happen in the fight. It's almost a guarantee at that point. So you have like Roccat Rand, Zillion, and Kha'Zix with Kog'Maw and a Thresh to really set up the kind of like, this is the person we're getting the reset on. So
Right.
when Yankos leapt into a fight, he was completely exposed, wasn't super tanky, only Randuin's Omen being his tankiest item in the whole build, but he died 0 times because there's always a Zillion ultimate. If they focused on him, Kog'Maw was left untouched in the background, and it was just this 2-pronged attack that we're not used to seeing. Right now with the hyper carries, with like a Twitch or in the late game, or a Tristana, or even the Kog'Maw here, you're so used to seeing like the Fnatic comp with Soaz, Lulu, and Peke Oriana, and everybody shields down on top of Reckless, and he carries the game from that point forward. This is a comp that directly combats that, and just
You're
jump
talking
on
about
it.
Game
and boom.
5. You're talking exactly about Game 5 comp. Which, I mean, that one, okay. So Rocket got an early lead in that game, but their mid-game was just horrifying. Their comp had absolutely zero wave clear, and I don't understand. They had Alistar, Jarvan, Fizz, Tristana, Thresh, and the only wave clear you're ever going to get from that comp is a static Shiv on Trist, which they didn't get till, I think, second or third item. And what it meant is that Fnatic would just get, they didn't even need to get it killed. They could just walk up to a turret, beat it down because there's no way to clear waves, and they came back from like a small gold deficit, like 3,000 or so, and just ran through Rocket towards the end of that game, which is so sad because Janko's looked really good. He got, I think, first blood in every single game this series. That may be exaggerating a little bit, but
he got 3 out of 5.
I mean, that's a lot. But they looked so good early, and I thought they were possibly going to be able to finish off Fnatic and their streak at the top of the splits. But yeah, unfortunately, Rocket fell in that last game, and unfortunately, kind of that snowballed against them in the third place match.
What was really the one thing that Fnatic did to stop Rocket in these games?
Well, that I don't really know. The last game, I think the pick ban phase was just ridiculous. And one thing that was weird, I just rewatched the Game 5 again. They picked up Fizz in the first set of picks Rocket did, and it looked like it was kind of a desperation. Oh crap, we have 2 seconds left. We need to pick some mid laner, and it just didn't fit with how they'd been playing the rest of the games. Like Overpower had played Caston, which is, you can kind of see that, and Fizz earlier, but when they were winning, it just, I don't know, it didn't look like the same set. I don't know why they didn't go Zillion. Like, just pick a Zillion early. It doesn't tell you much about. No, not in the last game.
In the last game he wasn't, but
it wasn't banned in the fourth game either. But he could have gone Zillion, and that, like, if you're trying to not show a lot about your team comp, if you're trying to have a safe early pick, Zillion would have been fine in the, like, what we've been talking about with the hyper carries. It would have been perfect. You could say, all right, we are still going to pick somebody later, and we can build a team around Zillion. But Fizz, I just didn't like that early one.
It was a lot of the time with the reason that they won game was their ability, or Fnatic won games, was their ability to snowball either their AD carry or their mid laner, so Xpeke or Reckless. And when they did that, it became really easy for them to win team fights. It became really easy for them to pick people out, and I think that once they have someone snowballed, they're a lot more confident in their team. When they have someone that they definitively know is going to do damage, and I think they're a lot more comfortable with having that sort of lead as opposed to a sort of lead where it's like a lot of objectives and a lot of things like that, where the gold is much more spread out. When one of their team members has a lot of kills, they know how to team fight. They know how to use that person to the fullest.
Yeah, it was definitely probably one of the best series I think we saw all weekend. So I would honestly recommend watching the whole series, but as somebody who really wanted Rocket to win, I highly suggest looking at game number 1.
And game number 4. Game number 4 was also 50-minute game too, which Rocket won, so Tom would be just as happy.
Definitely.
Yeah. Game 5 was really sad. Game 5 was over at Pick and Bands, which makes me think that no one should ever watch it ever, just because it was such an awkward set of picks. And
highly do not recommend also game number 3 because Aatrox lost.
The pride of EU lost? How?
Yeah. How? All right, let's get on to the last 2 matches.
Let's go on to the third place matchup, because after how well SK should have won the series against Alliance, how well SK threw the series against Alliance, and how well Rocket stuck it to Fnatic, this is really exciting. Like, this third place match, you didn't know who was going to take it, and this is for the last seed at Worlds out of EU. So Fnatic beat Rocket, they qualify. Alliance beat SK, they qualify. Now the third place matchup, these two teams that took it to the top 2 in Europe, was so underwhelmingly bad.
These games are pretty easy to summarize. Rocket can't play against or against Ahri. They're bad against Ahri. And I mean, part of that is Jesus is really good at Ahri. And the other part is they just don't seem to know how to position when an Ahri is in the game, and they make really bad decisions and really tend to underestimate Ahri's damage. Because really what we saw was Ahri game 1 and game 2, got really fed for 4-0-3 and 6-2-7. And then game 3, Roccat takes Ahri. They're like, we got it. We can't have it this time. And then they don't do anything with it because they have no idea how to play it.
It was just, even in the games, you would see the Roccat that kind of emerged in the summer split. The beginning of the split, they didn't look too good. Then they had a winning streak. Then they went on another losing streak. And when you saw them in the losing streaks, it would be they had a defeatist mentality. They would get first blood because they're Roccat, and that's what they do. And then it went from being the fact that they would forget about dragon control. They slowly progressed into a team that would overcommit to dragon control, kind of Copenhagen Wolves style. And I would have to say that kind of reared its ugly head in here again. There are multiple times where they would go into a pit where SK had already finished dragon, or would overstay in the dragon pit to try to secure the objective rather than turning on SK. And the composition from SK, you talked about it already. You have the Ahri in the mid lane from Jesus, the Kha'Zix that Svenskeren was taking from Jankos every single game. They left Elise up for him so they could get the Kha'Zix for Svenskeren. And then you had the hyper carry on the outside from Candy Pan, and most of the games it was Kog'Maw. And N-Rated paired it with, in 2 of these games, he paired it with Kayle support. Because Zilean was banned out, I believe, at least 2 of the games against Overpow. So you didn't have that kind of revive mechanic, and the support Zilean we saw in OGN was not really an option for them. But you pair it with a Kayle, with the same exact thing happens. An Ahri or a Kha'Zix or a Kog'Maw who gets jumped on, doesn't die, and then Roccat completely fall apart to the 3-pronged assault coming out from SK.
And before the Kayle nurse and the Kha'Zix nurse, before both of these champions kind of came back in this series, that was one of the most powerful things you could do, was pair like a mid lane Kayle with a jungle Kha'Zix. Because, I mean, Kha'Zix at that time did way more damage than he does now and would be able to jump in, kill somebody, be invulnerable for 3 seconds, and then utilize at that time his very powerful ult, which gave him damage reduction, to tank for another 6 seconds and kill someone else, and then leap out. And so it's really cool to see it come back like this, and to see the new Kha'Zix, this new rendition of Kha'Zix, this W Max Kha'Zix coming back. And I would not have expected Kayle support. When they picked Kayle, that's not where I thought for sure that's not where I was going to go. It doesn't seem like it does much, but N-Rated is kind of like the Lemonation of EU in the sense that he has a very clear plan going into pick and bans, and this was clearly part of his plan. Like, he knew that people weren't going to expect Kayle being a flex pick, being able to go into the support role, and they utilized it really well.
Yeah, I mean, that series, there's not... I wish there was more to talk about. I wish Roccat had made it more of a fight, but maybe they were emotionally exhausted from the Fnatic match. I would be. That was stressful enough to watch. So
I think it might be that, because I mean, SK might have walked away from this thinking we have to get better. We can't make those mistakes anymore. We can't let those late game mistakes happen. Like, we're better than that. And Roccat might have walked away like, wow, we really threw that game 5 away in picks and ban. Like, we suck. And I think a lot of this game is going to be about the attitude you bring into it for this 3rd place spot.
Yeah, I mean, I think SK didn't have that knocking on the doorstep mentality that Roccat had. Because they did lose 3-1. They didn't get to that game 5, but yep. So SK makes it through. They're making it to Worlds,
and Tom loses $30.
A lot of people were talking about SK went from relegated to Worlds in 1 year. Pretty awesome turnaround.
Yeah. And they have an excellent team, and I'm really impressed with N-Rated's pick and ban strategies. I'm really impressed with their team overall. The fact that they shored up their early game in this tournament is great. I'm really excited to see this team play on a world stage, and I think Thomas said this a lot. Their best of 5 presence is awesome. They know how to play a best of 5, and they are excellent at it.
Why did I not listen to myself? Oh well.
Because Overpow's glorious face was just looking at you saying, bet on me, Tom.
Overpow was probably the reason Roccat didn't win that 3rd spot. He was just disappeared.
He did not. He cracked under the pressure this time around. He really did. It was a little disappointing. His Fizz games, as weird as the Fizz pick may be for some people, he looked okay in most of them. But game 5 and game 3, you saw, I don't know how much they actually showed. I know it was in the rollout clip. at the end of the series, where you saw Rockets coach Veggie come out onto the stage. Normally Veggie, happy-go-lucky guy, never doesn't smile. He came out and just laid into Overpow. He was just like, I don't know what words were said in Polish, but he just laid into him.
He got picked into the Orianna Ari matchup, first game 1, right? As Orianna, lost horribly. Picks the other side, picks Ari in game 3 against Orianna, and loses again. He got stomped. I mean, he just totally got obliterated. He was nowhere. Greg is completely right. We just didn't see him. He did not show up to these games.
And they really needed that because Rockets turned into a team that was all about Jankos, into a team that has Overpow and Selavar trading off who carries the games, and Jankos helping them out. And when Selavar was attacked with this champion pool, when Jankos when he was given Elise basically as a trap, it didn't really work out for them. But SK advanced 3-0. They're going to be the third team in the EU LCS representing Europe at Worlds. And while I know we're closely approaching an hour, I'm not Matgadorm, and I have nothing better to do with my life, which means that we're going to go overtime here for all of you out there in podcast land and stream land. And apologies to the engineers who need to put this together later on. But we're going to go a little bit longer because we still have a best of 5 ending to the EU LCS this season. It is Alliance, the number 1 team for all of the split, going up against Fnatic, who was the only team to ever win the EU LCS going into Gamescom this weekend.
And we could probably save a lot of time if we just had a balloon we could slowly deflate into the microphone. So that pretty much represents Fnatic's turn.
You got the soundboard.
He only has the rap horn app, which is sweet. My roommate downloaded that the other night, by the way, and just started mashing on it every 3 seconds.
Wait. You're telling me
the saddest song I can find
on
my phone.
Are you telling me that app is literally just a button that goes?
Yeah, you pick what various where did you get this track?
Here, Tom, I don't know if you can see this on the Skype, but it is literally a red button, and it lets you select a song, and you can add the rap horn to whatever song you want.
I like how this became Alliance Fnatic really quickly. Oh my god.
Okay, that's the worst sound quality I've ever heard. Please stop, but that's awesome.
And now we're muted on Twitch. Anyway.
For just a little bit. Yeah.
So, Alliance against Fnatic, it's the finals of the European LCS. Fnatic didn't look the strongest against Rockhat, but pulled it out in game number 5. And Alliance definitely didn't look like Alliance against SK. Coming to this series, the best of 5, I mean, to be honest, even though it's the biggest headliners and there's a lot of story behind its individual players, I did not expect the best of 5 here because both teams didn't really play up to their potential in the semifinals. That was the case for one of these teams, but not necessarily the other.
This is really interesting for me because both of these teams are obviously very strong, but both of their top laners suck at Alistar and Maokai. They're both awful at the current popular top lane picks. I mean, the one game where Soaz showed up and did well, he played Lulu, who isn't played very frequently at this point. Obviously, still a very strong champion, but Wicked had a horrible stats in all of these games except for the last game and the second game. And Soaz was awful in every game except for the first game he played Lulu, where he went 4-1-11. So it's just both of these top laners are playing pretty poorly. It's just that Wicked is playing, slightly better.
With
less poorly. Yeah, with playing really, really well.
I liked Alliance did this a few times this tournament, and I like the Tristana mid pick that's come out a few times. It's AD Tristana. It's not the AP that we used to see occasionally, but they go kind of a double hyper carry. They went Tristana Jinx in game 2 against Fnatic, and just put a gigantic wall in front of them.
Yeah, no one seems to be able to handle that.
Lee Sin. Yeah, if how do you get past that? Anyone who goes in immediately gets kicked out or locked up for a few years.
The Braum plays on this series were fantastic. There were two standouts for me. The Braum and the Lee Sin. Braum blocked so many Nami waves I lost count, and Shook just looked amazing on Lee Sin. It felt like, at one game, I forget which one it was, it just felt like he was involved in literally every play. His positioning, his read of the map, He was just so mobile, and his ult kicks were always on point, and they created some major advantages for them.
That was game number 2. I think he had, if not 100%, damn close to 100% kill participation. 5, 2, and 10 on Lee Sin.
That was close.
This is utilizing the Braum pick to its fullest with this double 80 carry comp. Because Braum is strongest when he has people that can proc that passive, and that's just what you saw. Like, anytime anyone would go in, instantly stunned. Like, double 80 carries, that's literally like half a second after that passive has started, it's going to be proc, that person's going to be stunned, and they're going to die in 2 shots after that. It was awesome.
Well, like Greg said, Braum was picked every time after Nami, too. So it was able to eliminate an incredibly strong team fight ult that is just gone. It's not like there's not a lot of things. Like, when you actually think about the skills that get taken out by a Braum passive, by the Unbreakable, there's not that many, but something like a Nami ult, Ezreal ult, something like that, like when you have something that you can really target and say, I just won the fight for us because I took this out of the game, it's incredible. And I think that's going to be kind of a weird counterpick that people wouldn't have thought about.
Even graphically, okay, she's stopping Ash Arrow, whatever, Ezreal thing, okay. But to see the entire wave and, not just the front part of the graphic, but also the back part that slows. It's this enormous wave, hits the Braum shield, and boom, nothing. It's like it never even happened.
Just literally disappears instantly. Yeah. And that's probably a little bit of neglect on the graphics department's part. Like, there should be some sort of animation represented disappearing, but it's just gone. It just disappears in a second.
That'd be demoralizing.
On top of how demoralizing that was completely a counter to what Fnatic wanted to do. Without that Nami ultimate, game number 2, Kassadin, Swain, and Evelynn could not get to the double hyper carries. In game number 3, they actually did not have they went with the Nami again. Game number 3, they were actually able to get there, but that was a little bit different. There was a Zillion in the mid lane. There was some pretty poor Maokai play, and Shook did not have Lee Sin. He picked up Kha'Zix for the first time in that game. But every single time that Nami was prioritized from Fnatic, even against Roccat, it didn't necessarily work out. This series, it was because of the Braum, and I'm left a little bit speechless. We saw support Zillion come out in game number 1, maybe a little OGN spice coming in. Morgana finally got picked up in game number 4, which was unfortunately the last game for Fnatic. Where was Thresh? Where was the champion that Yellowstar was so good at the whole season, this entire series?
He played a lot of Nami this weekend. He played an insane amount of Nami. I need to go back and check that, but it might have been pretty much any game he could have.
I don't think he played Thresh at all this weekend.
Thresh has fallen out, though. That's the thing. Thresh has fallen out of popularity because of the popularity of these tanky top laner picks. Because there's so many people on the enemy team you don't want to hook. You don't want to hook the enemy Braum if you're playing Thresh. You can't hook a Morgana. If you hook a Maokai or an Alistar, you're dead. I mean, you're killing your whole team by trying to force an engage there. And the thing is I understand Nami is a strong pick. She has an excellent laning phase. Her ult is incredibly powerful. You can use it to engage or disengage. But when picked into a Braum, that entire portion of your engage or that entire portion of your disengage, if you're behind, is just gone instantly with one skill. And trading an ult for an E is awful. It's embarrassing.
Yeah.
And, so another one of these things is in game number 1, Alliance really came out of the gate and they showed that, okay, one of the things that they didn't necessarily do against SK was secure objectives, especially pre-20 minutes. Alliance in this game took 75% of the dragons. I want to say it was 16 out of 20 or some ungodly number like that. Fnatic, the only dragons Fnatic got were 40 minutes into the game after Alliance took a Baron. The objective control in this one was unparalleled. And normally what we see out of Fnatic is this is a team that had I believe it was the most dragons in the entire EU LCS split. There was no objective control from Fnatic. They really all-in on we need to make sure that Reckless can get farm. And that was the only game they won, too. Game number 3, they wound up going so deep on the Reckless plan. The ganks bottom lane got him going extremely early. Then they compound it with the fact this is the only game they got Orianna. They played Lulu in the top lane where Soaz had a good enough game, built a lot of AP, and those shields were ginormous. And they had the Nami for the sustained support. It was literally textbook what the metagame is right now. Reckless was 10-0 and 6 on Tristana, and nobody could kill him.
Yeah, it's the triple support. We were talking about this last week, how it's the team comps with the most supports can win the team fight every time because AD carries are so strong.
Yep.
And then you came into game number 4, the last game of the series, where Fnatic tried to do the same exact thing. They lost the Orianna, so they went with some wave clear to back up their AD carry. They picked the Ziggs in this matchup. And you saw right out of the get-go, the first thing that Alliance did, they waited in a brush at level 1 at the bottom lane and killed Reckless. And as soon as that happened, it was like, game over.
Game over. Yeah, which is crazy. Like, they just... And that's the reason why I have hope for Worlds for Alliance, is they identified Fnatic's focus, right, after the game where he was successful, and they just shut it down. And that was an adaptation, because that's not something they had done in the earlier games. It wasn't something they were worried about. But when they saw like such an excellent performance coming out of him in Game 3, they just knew, like, this is it. This is the linchpin to the whole Fnatic operation. And if we shut him down, that's it. Like, we will win the game. And they did it. And it was a beautiful execution. A little close for a First Blood for my taste. You know, almost got out, but he didn't. And they managed to pull it together.
Yeah. So I think that pretty much covers EU.
Yeah.
Well, if you guys... So it was a 3-1 in favor of Alliance. The games were pretty Alliance heavy. Alliance one-sided, except for game number 3, which is the one that Fnatic won. If you guys had to recommend a game to watch in this series, which one would it be and why?
In this series, that's really tough. I think Game 2 is the most exciting. This is the game where we really see Alliance just dominate and have an excellent performance. But it's not the most exciting game because they're so dominant. But I really enjoyed it. I think the Lee Sin play, I think as Greg was saying, the Lee Sin play was excellent. Watching Braum block all those Nami waves was excellent. It was a really just an excellent game.
You could probably learn a lot from that game.
Yeah, my closing comment for Alliance is the mechanics look good. Like, Shook's mechanics are amazing. His map presence is amazing. I think they lack the aggression to really go all the way in Worlds. They're probably Europe's... I mean, they're by definition Europe's best hope, being the number 1 team to come in. But I think they're... while they're disciplined, that patience is just not going to cut it against some of the more aggressive meta of the Asian teams. And I don't think it's going to serve them very well once they get out there on the international stage.
Craig, you're giving me like the best springboards ever, because the question that they asked during the EU LCS broadcast, I believe the Twitter question for the day was, what team from Europe you think will do the best at Worlds and why? So I want the rest of you guys to answer that one too. Is it going to be Alliance? Is it going to be SK, who we saw can adapt to these series? Is it going to be Fnatic, because Fnatic have the history of being good in these best of X and pressure scenarios? Like, who will be the best representation from Europe?
I think it's Alliance. I think one thing that I know that the Trist isn't that crazy, and there were a few other team comps I really liked from Alliance this weekend, but their ability to kind of adapt ahead of time was, I think, really good. I think they're being a bit more innovative than some of the other than Fnatic or SK, and again, because they got the first seed, I think they're gonna have the easiest draw by far when it comes to Worlds.
Yeah, I'll agree with that. I think Alliance will probably be the best bet. SK has just too many problems. They've improved their early game, but it could still be a weak point, especially against early aggressive teams like from OGN and stuff. So. Yeah, I don't know. Especially if they can't close out a lead, if they do happen to get one, I think that's going to be problematic. Fnatic is good, but just not good enough. I don't have a lot of confidence in Alliance, but I think they've probably got the best shot for Europe.
I'm going to take a different route. I think that Alliance will do excellent, and then based on their seeding, they might perform better. But SK was... I mean, up until 30 minutes in every one of those games that SK played against Alliance, SK was excellent. They played an awesome game. And I think that if they can, in the next couple of weeks, the next month or so, shore up those late game, issues, which they should know how to do. It's something that they've had a strong phase. Words. Their late game has always been really strong in the past. So I don't think it'll be that big of a deal for them to figure that out and make that work. And if they do, I mean, that early game was great. If they can bring back the old style SK late game, they'll have a strong late game too, and they'll really have a great all-around game. And I think that as long as their seeding doesn't put them up against, like double Korean teams or, one of the better Korean teams, they will make it out of group stage, which I think is probably better than, what Alliance can hope for at this point.
Well, that is one of the best things that Alliance won. Not only do they win the EULCS and win the playoffs, dethroning Fnatic for the first time in EULCS history, but they also get the number 1 seed, which if you guys haven't seen on the League of Legends website, just look at leagueoflegends.com or whatever region, like na.leagueoflegends.com, EUW. Whatever. So on the League of Legends main website, and maybe on LOL Esports as well, they released the format of how the teams get seeded into the group stage. Not where they fall, but how they're going to be drawing their pool play group, which is there's 3 different pools. Pool number 1 includes all of the number 1 seeds, meaning that no number 1 seed has to play against each other during the group stages. Pool number 2 is all of the other seeds that are going to be drawn from the first place of the GPL, because I believe the pool number 1 is only China, Korea, EU, and NA. Then, yes. So pool number 2 is the number 1 and 2 from GPL, Taiwan, Singapore, the Southeast Asian region, as well as all of the number 2 and further down seeds in the main regions. Sorry, all the number 2 seeds and all the number 2 the main regions.
No, it's close. It's close. There's the 3rd seed from Korea and China, both are in there. And then Pool 3 has 3rd from North America, EU, and then the wildcard teams.
There we go. I actually didn't have it up, so I was trying to do it from memory.
I had it right in front of me. We don't know who they play at all yet, but they have the best shot, and they'll have the easiest draw, assumedly.
Well, no team from a region can play against another team from the region in the group stage, which means that we are almost guaranteed, since there are 4 groups of 4, we're almost guaranteed to have like there's a chance that we can have a number 1 North American or European team playing against a number 1 Southeast Asian and a number 2 Korean and a number 2 Chinese team. So there is still a chance that it's not the best group draw for them, but they definitely have the best shot of at least avoiding the other teams in the region and avoiding top seeds, which are right now Samsung Blue and yet to be determined in the other regions.
Tom, why don't you go into a little bit about how what the post-group stage looks like? How are these groups going to be paired off against one another once the dust all settles?
Just a bracket.
It's just a bracket. I'm not exactly sure. I believe every single number 1 from the group plays against a number 2 from another group. Not 100% certain on that. I don't know if group 1 plays group 4 number 2 and blah, blah, blah. But it's going to be very similar to last year where the higher seeds play the lowest seeds in order. And then they wind up going down all the way from a quarterfinals to a semifinal and then into the main final. And all of the bracket stage takes place in Korea. The group stages take place in 2 different destinations, one in Taiwan and the other one in, holy crap, why do I keep forgetting? Singapore, thank you. I always want to say Vietnam for some reason, but it's not Vietnam.
Yeah. So, that should what do we have next week? We just have we have the NALCS quarterfinals.
It's just NA, no one cares.
Yeah, you're right. For those who do care, besides Tom, and NALCS quarterfinals, and then the Challenger Series playoffs happen. So we figure out the 3 teams that'll be in the promotion tournament for NA playing against. Mm-hmm. Wow, I'm blanking on this now too. Who finished 7th and 8th? Oh God.
Complexity and
Evil
EG.
Geniuses. Evil Geniuses. Oh my.
They're easy teams to forget. I don't blame you.
Yeah, right.
Oh, that's me.
It's been so many weeks since we've seen them play.
I'm sorry. I hate on EG so much. I know you're an EG fan. I should chill out a little.
I'm not as much of a fan as I used to be. Although I still love Crepo.
He's a Crepo fan.
He's my favorite player. Period. But it's just not the same without Pete and Snoopy. Although I will have to say, their jungler Helios is pretty impressive. But that's neither here nor there.
All right. Well, does that?
Yeah. Just to recap, guys, the games to watch this week are going to be the OGN finals. If you want to watch EU games, the Fnatic versus Roccat series were our favorite. If you want to watch LPL or GPL, you can watch all the games. There weren't that many, although I wouldn't recommend it. They weren't very exciting or interesting this particular week, unless you like Cho'Gath top, in which case the GPL is the way to go.
Season 2.
I still can't. I still hope that AHQ makes it to Worlds because my boy Westdoor needs a trophy on his shelf.
Oh man, Westdoor on that Zed? Love me some Zed. I mean, it turned out bad, but I like Westdoor. I like that he picked Zed more than
the idea. Maybe not the execution.
But I like people who pick Zed. I love that champion.
Listen, if he didn't have a Cho'Gath top on his team, he would have done things with that Zed.
Oh yeah. Hey, man, you don't understand. They worship hotshot over there. You got to understand. It's Cho'Gath and Italy top. Those are your options.
Hotshot in Italy, GG, kicked his brother in the ass.
Yep. All right.
But that leaves us with 6 teams qualified for Worlds. If you guys missed it, the 3 from EU. Recap quick. Alliance, Fnatic, and SK Gaming. The international wildcard seed was Dark Passage. GPL, it was the Taipei Assassins. And of course, from Korea, we already know Samsung Blue are going to be the 6th team we have. There's still a lot more that are going to be determined. 10 teams left. In the upcoming weeks, you'll want to pay attention to that. Like we said, NA is going to really dominate the meat of the week. I believe over the weekend, the GPL regionals actually happen on Friday night / Saturday morning. It starts on the 20. It starts, I believe, the 23rd. It might end on the same weekend. Not 100% certain, but definitely starts this weekend. So we may actually know the 2nd seed from GPL as well.
We will. We'll know that by the end of next week.
And we will not know quite yet, but the weekend after next at PAX, we'll also figure out the 2nd international wildcard seed between the team formerly known as Pineapple Express, which has now renamed themselves to just PEX, so they sound like a bad workout routine, going up against the Brazilian seed Kaboom, where, unlike China, the Brazilian teams were able to defeat the Koreans in their playoffs. So now China, of course, if you don't know, Royal Club has 2 Korean players, most famously Insec, on their team. So we're going to get the chance to see those as the LPL